Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1779, and today's date is January 30th, 2019, and the title of the episode is Trump Signals the Economic Agenda Gold Standard. Now, before I get started, I wanted to talk about Trump. You might have heard in the news that President Trump is withdrawing 2,000 of our boys and girls out of Syria. Just a while ago, he took an 11-hour flight in darkness and total secrecy to go out to Iraq with First Lady to visit the troops there. He said, "We're no longer the sucker, folks," was his storming declaration. With President Trump, you get what you see, and that's what we love about him. He delivers. So does Noble Gold. They put together this stunning solid silver coin to underline that great job he's doing, with highlights of his achievement to date and a portrait on the front. Any Trump supporter would be crazy about one of these. Go to TrumpCoin2020.com and use the code X22 to get free shipping. This is a $6.50 savings. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, out in the UK, we see the deep state, the central bank, they are really pushing very, very hard to make sure they get their way. And we talked about fear-mongering before, and they're just continuing with this. I mean, they're saying if the UK does a hard Brexit, basically no deal, Britain is going to look like a post-apocalyptic Australia from Mad Max. And Britons will have to battle it out, just like in Thunderdome, where they need to get food, medicine, supplies, fuel, and things like that. I mean, this just sounds crazy. Well, it is. The notion that reverting to the World Trade Organization rules on trade would cause anything beyond a transient disruption to supply chains is ridiculous on its face. What they're doing is they are scaring the people. They are scaring the Brexiters. They don't want this agreement to go forward without the EU, the central bank, in control of what it says. And you can see that they're just pushing their agenda by scaring everybody. This is what the central bank does. Now, why are they pushing fear? Whenever a central bank pushes fear or demonize maybe gold, cryptocurrency, or anything like that, always think mirror. Now, a study was done by several UK universities that concluded that a no-deal Brexit could lead to thousands more deaths by 2030. The reason? Get this. Rising fruit and vegetable prices could lead to a spike in unhealthy eating. So when you read the headline, it sounds like, oh my God, as soon as this happens, everyone's going to die. I mean, this is what they're reporting here. What do you think is going to happen if the central bank doesn't get their way? Why do you think the central bank is fighting so hard to make sure that they stick to their deal? Because if or when the UK decides to separate themselves, they're afraid that the UK is going to prosper. Remember right after the referendum, they said it's going to be a complete and utter disaster? The economy is going to crash. Nothing happened. This is what they're most afraid of. They're afraid that if the UK does well without the EU, without the central bank, other countries are going to start to catch on. That is their biggest fear. Remember, the deep state, the central banks, what they normally do is they push fear to convince everyone in doing it their way. And if you don't do it their way, well, then they come up with events and other things to force you into doing it their way. But what this shows us is something very, very important, and we see it spreading around the world. This was just the beginning, this referendum, to go up against the central banks. We see the yellow vests. We see the people around the world, they're waking up. This is the biggest nightmare the central banks, the deep state could ever imagine. The people waking up. Now, here in the United States, Trump, the Patriots, with Q, they've been waking up the people very, very slowly, trying to get them used to the idea that we have corruption, we have treasonous individuals. Yes, and I know many people that have been looking at this for a very long time, you already knew this, But think of the thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people that never knew about this. And the reason why they're doing this is because they're preparing a transition, preparing to reset the entire system, and to point the finger at those who are responsible for putting us into this place that we're in today. And that is a central bank deep state system. So Trump right now, we discussed many times before, he's bringing back jobs. Now, ADP, they reported that manufacturing jobs, they have surged the most since 2012. And it looks like more and more manufacturing jobs are coming back to the United States. Now, something very important. The mainstream media, the deep state, the Dems, they continually tell us that this shutdown, well, it hurt the economy. It hurt the jobs. It hurt everything. Mark Zandi, chief economist of Moody's Analytics, said the following: the job market weathered the government shutdown well. Despite the severe disruptions, business continued to add aggressively to their payrolls. Manufacturing jobs increased. Having the government shut down really doesn't affect the private sector that much. Yes, I know there are businesses that are connected to the government, but most of the businesses around the country are not. And they're not really affected by a government shutdown. And this just shows us once again that the government shutdown really didn't have that much effect on the everyday person. Yes, there are certain agencies within the government that are going to be affected because they didn't get paid. But overall, no one really felt any difference if the government was open or closed, except for the mainstream media out there making it a really, really big deal. Now, here in the United States, we know the economy is deteriorating. Q has been telling us that the deep state, the central bank, the bad guys in the central bank, they were preparing to bring down the economy in 2020 by raising the interest rates. And we know that Trump completely took control of the Fed. Yes, Powell, Trump working together. And they figured out this plan, and they knew that there were certain individuals that started out where they were raising the rates, and they were going to eventually bring down the economy during the election time. This is why the mainstream media was out there reporting that in 2020, that's when we're going to have the recession. I mean, all of a sudden, they know exactly when the economy is going to rip itself apart, which is kind of unbelievable. Unless they had insider information, almost like that Roger Stone raid. But anyhow, we see right now that housing sales, they're still declining. Now, remember, there are two things happening in the economy. There's a people's economy and there's a statistical economy. Trump can keep the statistical economy moving along. Stock market, GDP, unemployment, you name it, it will look great. The people's economy, on the other hand, well, this has been struggling and people have been struggling. Right now, U.S. pending home sales, they have crashed to the most we've seen in 5 years. Home sales, they dropped about 2.2% month on month, and they were expected to have a 0.5 rise. This is the lowest in 2014. This is the 12th month in a row of annual sales declines and the biggest annual drop in 5 years. And you can see the trajectory that homes have been declining. Yes, when you raise interest rates, when houses balloon out of control where you can't afford them, and wages don't go anywhere, you're going to have a problem. And Trump is fighting against time right now because this economy that we're in is a gigantic illusion. It was created by the deep state, the central bankers. And they were hoping to show that the economy was doing great, but it fell apart because of Russia, North Korea, whatever they were going to use at the time to bring us to war. Well, now the central banks are exposed. Now everyone can see what is happening. And I'm not just talking about the Fed. I'm talking about the central banks around the world. This is why they're starting to reverse course a little bit, because they're trying to hold on a little bit longer. And why do you think they mentioned the date 2020? Yes, we have the elections at that point in time, and they were hoping that they can hold everything off until that time and then maybe bring us into a war, say Trump collapse the economy, and then move ahead with their plan. But Trump Q, they told us they already knew the plan. Now, Trump, his administration, formally gave Congress a list of its proposed changes to its trade policy. And these requests will put the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement on trade into effect. The list is the first step in getting Congress to approve the trade deal that would replace the 1993 North America Free Trade Agreement, which is NAFTA. Replacing NAFTA has been a major goal for Trump. Now, U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer told Finance Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley in a letter, "I look forward to working with Congress to implement this important agreement." And the list says the deal will change the rules of origin for when autos and auto parts can be imported duty-free. The letter also states the deal will set tariff quotas for agricultural products from Canada, including dairy, sugar, peanuts, including language transitioning the U.S. out of NAFTA, among other changes. Grassley was cautious regarding the administration's proposal. He said this is an important step required under U.S. law to implement the new trade deal with Mexico and Canada. Congress has to carefully consider the agreement and work out the details before it can be ratified. And we need to remember Q said something very, very important. Trust Grassley. And we can see that we are transitioning out of NAFTA, which is another globalist trade deal. If you see what Trump is doing right now, he is moving away from the globalist system. Now, today, the Fed decided not to raise rates. And when asked the question, did Trump's criticism factor into your decision, Powell completely dismissed this. And this is what the central bankers, the bad guys in the central banks, are worried about. They're worried about governments taking control over the Fed. Powell is playing it cool. No. I decided that we weren't going to raise rates. Even though the economy is doing fantastic, stronger than ever, the stats look incredible, better than ever, we're just going to hold off right now. Why do you think he's doing that? Well, first of all, Trump has the magic wand. Second of all, they knew the plan. They knew the plan to bring down the economy in 2020. They need to stop this, because if they allow this to continue and Trump continually criticizes the Fed, well, guess what? The economy will come down and Trump would not be able to finish the plan to get rid of the Fed. So they need to get past this hurdle. And again, we need to understand that plans always change. The deep state and the central bankers, the bad guys in the central bank, they're always going to try to make a move one way or another. Now, Trump tweeted out something very, very interesting, and we went over many of Trump's posts, and he does believe in gold. He believes in the gold standard, and he once said, whoever controls the gold controls pretty much everything. And he tweeted out the following: "Our economy right now is the gold standard throughout the world." Now, gold standard, he capitalized the G and the S. And he wrote, "At Ingram Angle, so true and not even close." So right now, Trump is telling us something, that the economy is headed towards a gold standard. What has Q told us? Q has told us that gold is going to bring down the Fed. And I want to go back to H.R. 5404. This is a bill which is in the House, which is March 22nd, 2018, and this was submitted by Mr. Mooney of West Virginia, and the bill states the following: to define the dollar as a fixed weight of gold, be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America in Congress assembled. We see this bill, we see H.R. 24, H.R. 25, all the bills are prepared and ready. They're just sitting there. And just because they're sitting there doesn't mean there's not going to be any type of action later on. Remember, to move a bill like this, you need something to happen where it calls attention to what is happening. So if the economy comes down and Trump was blaming it on the Fed, he could say the Fed was responsible for bringing down the economy because they raised the rates, which I think they're going to do after the election. And then Trump could say, why were they raising the rates while the economy was doing so well? It makes no sense. Maybe we should find out what else the Fed has been doing, because it seems like they're working in the opposite direction of what we're trying to do here. Oh, wait, here's audit the Fed. And that's how it begins. That's all that needs to happen. And when you get the American people together and the economy crashes and Trump is pointing the finger at the Fed, guess what? People start to wake up because you're hitting them in their wallet. Now, in the next report, when we talk about Venezuela, we need to remember something very important. We need to remember gold, oil. Venezuela has gold and oil. Q has told us that gold will bring down the Fed. So is Trump moving to reestablish relations with Venezuela because of gold and oil? Now, I don't mean we're going to invade Venezuela. That's not how Trump works. The question is, he needs to clean up what the deep state has done, just like with North Korea, Syria. He's working on Iran right now, and now Venezuela. Remember, the deep state, they have strongholds in many, many countries. We're in the process of cleaning all of this up. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.